Morning.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, May 1st, 2026. And today we have Donnie Johnson III here to talk to us about solar and real estate. So I've known Donnie for a couple of years. He is the head of operations for Solar Survey AI, founder of Helio Wave Dynamics, and he's an apprentice at my real estate co. He just has to finish a few classes and then he can reactivate his license and he will be at my real estate company too. So we're very excited to have him today. He's worked very hard on this, and I'm excited to see what he has to say. So I will share.
Yes, I appreciate that, Holly. And yeah, you were great, and for me personally, and um, so I started out at Coldwell Banking in 2020 as an agent. I was part of the same market frenzy anyone else would have been during that time, but yet I was unable to use that growth for my own personal business. So as a young agent, I was looking for ways to drive value with future innovation. And that's when I went into solar as a solar salesman. I was door knocking from the end of 2020 till around the 2021 mark, where then I wanted to kind of diversify my skills because I was like, yeah, I understand the value aspects, the numbers of solar, but I don't know how to identify solar, which is what I actually felt would help bridge real estate and solar. So I went into solar assessments from 2022 to 2024, where I would show up to the house, properly identify different metrics that would make a home a good candidate. Then in 2025, I moved into a more operational role where I could oversee installations and different things. So I wanted to get hands-on. So I did a 6-month stint of actually installing the solar because there's no way to learn something than actually getting your hands dirty and actually experiencing it live. So I felt like that was a necessary growth for me and growing my expertise. And then from there, I was able to reconnect with Holly and get this great opportunity with my real estate agent co and company. And so I just love this opportunity because it helps focus and drive individuals their own value. So for me, I want to be able to use solar to drive value to customers so I can be worthy as a prospect. So the history of solar panels and how they work. So the photo to the left was the first photovoltaic, which is light converting to energy, invented by Charles Fritt. He was an innovator born in the 1850s. This was actually installed in 1884 in New York, and it actually laid the groundwork for a lot of the modern systems that exist today, which is actually the system on the right. And the first obvious thing about solar is it's not generating energy without the sun actually hitting the panels. Sun hits the panels and then converts the energy from DC to AC and then ultimately powering the grid. And that's one misconception with solar is, yeah, the home has the capacity, the system has the capacity to power the home, but without the proper storage, you're not going to be able to store the energy and have production at night. So that's when they got net metering, where you're technically powering the grid. So your system's powering the grid, and then the grid, which is your utility company, is giving you credits for that energy that you can take off your energy bill. So you're not actually powering the home, you're powering the grid, which in return, the electric company is giving you credits. So what you need to know, owning versus leasing versus full ownership. So if you're approaching a homeowner that has a solar system on their house and you're wanting to sell that house, you would need to understand those three different types of ownerships. Full ownership That means on installation, they paid it off in cash, so they owe nothing on the system, or they borrowed money and paid that money off, so now they have full ownership. And with that, you're able to sell this house 3 to 4% more than what, and up, really up to like 7% is like the national average. So if we kind of barrel in at like 5%, let's say you paid 25,000 for the system. At that point, you could sell the system as an added fixture to the home. Um, so if it's 25,000, that'd be 1250. So 2650, $26,150 would be the value that you could sell that system on top of the home value. Whereas if you're borrowing the system, at that point, you got a loan to get the system and you're still making payments. So you'd want to know what that payoff is, because the person buying the house would be responsible for either taking over that the payments, or they would have to have a payoff at the time of closing. So a lot of time, since there is that 3 to 7% increase on the value from what they initially paid on installation, that really won't be an issue. But again, it's still good knowledge to know when you're vetting these clients. And then the third option would be a solar lease. That is a little more tricky, because at that point, the owner of the home they don't actually own the system. They're leasing it from a financee. And the person that's buying the house would have to agree to take over that leasing agreement. Those leasing agreements are for 25 years. So if the homeowner had 13 years that they've been paying on that house, you would have an additional 12 years taking over that lease that you'd be required to pay. And that's not actually getting ownership in the system either. So really the only way around that is if you were to pay the lease outright, which is canceling a solar lease, you're going to get charged more than what they paid for the installation. Plus, you're going to get cancellation fees, and it's going to be really expensive, far outweigh the benefit. So you would definitely need to know the third party lease is very tricky. Anyways, identifying what is a good candidate for solar. So you got 3 homes here, 2 that have great exposure for light, and then that house, that little cottage on 72 Pinewood, unfortunately has a lot of tree coverage. And that would be the number one thing that would prevent a home from going solar, is not having the appropriate light to actually power the system. A lot of times, these trees are going to be in condensed neighborhoods where you're not going to really convince a neighbor to cut their tree down just so you can have solar. So that would be the biggest constraint. Second would be the roof. It's the most expensive thing to fix on a house. Typically, to get solar, you would need at least 5 years of quality on the roof, because on average, it costs around $125 to $300 to remove each panel just to put just to get a resheeting. So if you got solar, oh my gosh, 2 years later, I need a new roof, you're going to have to pay 125 to 300 just to take each panel off. Then you'll have to resheet the roof, and then you'll have to put the system back on. So that could cost you thousands of dollars that you could have just replaced the roof. Typically have 25 to 50-year spans on the roofs. The solar is good for 25 years. So now you're not going to have that added expense later on. And then the last thing that could really make a solar project expensive is outdated electricity. So to upgrade a main service panel, it would cost roughly around $5,000. I mean, a lot of times they can tie these in with the solar financing. So over a 25-year loan, it's not going to really affect too much, maybe dollars. So it's just something to identify, moving forward. They would ideally would want to have an upgraded electric system anyways, just for the danger of not having that. And when you have these solar panels on the roof, they are covered for 25 years in that warranty. So if you get damage from debris, maybe hailstorms, different things, the solar installation team that put the panels on would be required to fix that for up to 25 years for any type of damage. The roof is also covered in those warranties. So if you get any roof damage due to anything caused by the solar system or on the installation, that would be covered. So the main thing is making sure that you're identifying, does this home make sense for solar? Installations, where can they go? So the two most common types of installation is the roof mount and the ground mount. The ground mount is going to be more efficient. On average, it produces 25% more energy because it's able to get better coverage throughout the day. So if you think about the sun rises from east to west, sets in the west. On a ground mount, you could get coverage from anywhere from 10 a.m. In the summer's time, it can go all the way to 9 p.m. Whereas a roof mount, because of pitches and different restraints with the brackets, really you're only going to get around 8 to 9 hours peak coverage. And that's if we get south facing sun. And if you don't have the planes to get south facing sun, you're going to be losing a lot on your offset and your ability to fully energize your home. So the ground mount is more expensive because you're using bigger pipes, galvanized steel, whereas the roof mount, you're using aluminum and a racking system. They're all tied to inverters and all powered the same. So those are the main differences. Do you have yard space? And if you don't, because you live in a city, it's going to have to go on the roof. And at that point, you need to make sure that you have the appropriate lighting and the lack of obstructions. Buying a home with solar versus installing after close. So if you're interested in solar and you're also looking for a house, what would you do? I would personally, if a lot of times the only benefit on buying a house with solar is the fact you don't have to get financing. So if you're looking at the top of your budget, it might be better to try to find something that has solar, knowing that it's going to be tough for you to get that financing after. But if you can wait, really that would be more beneficial because at that point, you're not going to know your own production versus the production that they installed. You might have more kids, you might have more solar demands, maybe you're mining Bitcoin, whatever, but you're not going to know your own energy demand till you get a year of your energy bill because how they figure out how many panels you're going to get, they take the top month of energy production that you use and they divide that throughout the year on an average. So that's typically your summer months because you have a lot of energy being expended on keeping the house cool. So they would take that, maybe August bill, and that system would be built strong enough to handle the lack of peak time during the winter. And then during the spring, we get a lot of rain and storms in Iowa. So really, if you're building it off of your peak month, you're going to be good for the whole year. And the main thing is if you're wanting to build a system that will actually offset your demands and then also not pay that 3 to 7% extra for just buying a system someone else installed, it'd be better on a value and a personal use to install the system after you've lived in the home for a year. What to do when my client wants to know more? So as real estate agents, we're constantly making connections and we're trying to drive as much value to our clients and to our business as possible. So as an individual, you want to make sure that if you are recommending a solar company or solar installation to your client, that they want to bed the different installation teams that have the best offerings. So with my install team, we would take a client, we would get them a 3D model orthomosaic drone flight where we would do a shading analysis and then we would do a height width measurements of the roof so we can build the most efficient system possible. From there, you want to check the warranties. maybe they have 25, maybe this company has 30-year warranties. Maybe they have different qualifications in terms of um, like when a panel breaks, how long is their response time to fix that panel? Because 10 days without energy production, there goes a third of your month that you could have been producing that now you're going to have to pay back as energy. So working with clients that have the best offering, just as you would bet anyone in the connections that you're making. Rebates and incentives. So yes, right now, based on the projections, in 2026, we're averaging nationwide around 250 on energy. Projection to go up to 388 and ultimately land in a few decades close to $800. So inflation is our biggest incentive to lock in a rate that we can consistently pay for 25 years while powering our home demand. You're going to save, ultimately thousands and thousands of dollars. And then after you've paid the system off, you'll have full ownership and you're still producing energy. So then now you've eliminated the problem altogether. Second, you want to make sure as an agent, how can I drive my business and make as much value as I can? So typically when you got a client, they're interested in solar, when you approach a EPS and install team, that is a referral and it's worth money. Typically, you can get anywhere from $600 to $1,000 just for a name and an address. So making sure, obviously, you have the proper disclosures when you send a client, so they all know that you're getting paid for the transaction. But it's worth money, and you want to make sure that you're driving your business and the ability to make money for connections. The Iowa incentives. So in Iowa, we have a zero property tax exemption for 5 years. So that means you won't have to pay property taxes on the house for 5 years, which is absolutely amazing. And it won't, and that you'll still have property taxes, but you won't have to pay the increase because the solar is going to make your house more valuable, but you won't have to pay that increase in that value for 5 years. So that keeps you fixed in. Your sales tax exempt, so saving 6% upon installing the system. You got the ITC federal tax incentive, and unfortunately, it ended in 2025 and transitioned in 2026 to leasing only. So the only way that you'll get 30% tax deduction anywhere nationwide is if you're leasing a solar system. Which of course they're always finding ways to drive the elites. That's a way to suck the money from the homeowners. But either way, ultimately they have net metering. In Iowa, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So every kilowatt produced is a dollar received. So it's 1-to-1. It's not like that in every state. In some states, it's called net billing, where it's not based off of the kilowatts produced. It's based off of like macro transactions. So you're on average you're going to get like a third of the actual energy produced that the payout is compared to a 1-to-1 ratio. So you really need to identify what the incentives are in each state. So that way you can appropriately help your client and drive the most value possible. The future of solar panels. So that's the great thing, with these clawbacks and these utility companies they're hating the money they're losing. So that's why they created net billing, because they want to get more money back into their accounts. And that's where the future of energy is going to be key, because they're producing now solid state batteries instead of using lithium batteries. So ultimately, lithium batteries is a lot of what generates and powers backup storage. So when you got a system and you're charging your battery, which currently it was lithium, now moving to solid state, you could charge roughly 3 batteries and then power certain aspects like the Wi-Fi, fridge, and maybe a cooler. But with the solid state battery, because it's not a liquid based battery like lithium. Lithium is a liquid electron based battery where solid state is a thermal. So you don't have to have the coolant. It's way more effective. It stores up to double the amount of energy. So as the batteries grow, our ability to store energy and get off of the grid, we'll be able to eventually take control of our own energy and just kiss those electric bills goodbye. And that is going to be ultimately where microgridding comes in the future, where you'll have independent solar farms gridding out to independent businesses. You'll have EV charging stations, smart appliance applications that will all tie into more efficiency as we grow into the future. For a real estate agent, um, solar is becoming a standard asset. In 2000, it was 1% of all buildings in the US had solar. Now in 2026, 9% of buildings have solar, and by 2050, a projected 47% of buildings will have solar. So, as an agent, we need to be able to understand this value, be able to drive it to our clients, and be able to adapt to the conditions and making sure that we're growing our business and not falling behind. So we really want to just be as agents, like making connections and driving value is going to be our biggest thing to grow our business. Awesome. So I will open it up for questions. And but yeah, I really appreciate everyone being here.
I don't
Awesome.
obviously I don't see anything on Twitch or in Zoom, so if anybody has anything, just open your mic and let us know. But we'll give it a few seconds here. But I think that's hopefully covered everything, Donnie.
What's the best phone number for you in case somebody has additional questions and they want to reach out?
Best phone number 319-217-2106. And that is my personal/business, which, yeah, I've combined both because in 2026, it's hard not to.
Right? I totally get it. Awesome. Well, thanks for your time today and appreciate all the information about solar. I just know if I have anyone interested, I'll be calling you and you can have that conversation with them.
Yes. No, I really appreciate it. And, as a young agent at the time and moving into today, I really just want to be in a position to not only drive my business, but drive the future of the real estate industry. And with emerging technologies. And I think that's going to be big for everyone. So no, I really appreciate the platform and being a part of your team and being a part of this mission.
Sounds good. Well, if no one has anything else, when in doubt, reach out, message us if you need us. We are here for you. We all started this morning with a blank slate at 0. So go out and talk to a buyer, a seller, or an agent today. Have a good one. Bye.
Peace.